Picture this. July 8th, 1758. North America. 1,000 Scottish Highlanders, kilts swinging, broadswords drawn, bagpipes screaming, charge into a wall of French musket fire. They're outnumbered. They're exposed. They're doomed. Within 4 hours, over half of them are dead or dying. But here's what's insane. They kept charging 6 times. Through sharpened wooden stakes, through artillery fire, through hell itself. The French couldn't believe it. The British command was horrified. But the Highlanders? They became legends. This is the Black Watch, a regiment forged from Scotland's most rebellious clans, turned into Britain's most lethal weapon. For nearly 300 years, they fought in every major British conflict from the American Revolution to Iraq. They were feared, they were unstoppable, and their story is written in blood. This is how a police force became the most elite fighting unit in the British Empire. The Black Watch didn't start as a military regiment, it started as a betrayal. In 1715, Scotland erupted in rebellion. Jacobite Highlanders rose up to overthrow King George I and restore the Catholic Stuart line to the throne. The rebellion failed, but the British government learned a brutal lesson. The Scottish Highlands were ungovernable. These weren't peasants with pitchforks. Highland clans were warrior societies, feudal, fiercely independent, and armed to the teeth. Blood feuds lasted generations. Cattle raiding was routine. The central government's authority was a joke. So in 1725, the British came up with a dark solution. Turn Scots against Scots. General George Wade, commander-in-chief in Scotland, was authorized to raise 6 independent companies of Highlanders, drawn from clans loyal to the crown. Campbells, Munros, Frasers, Grants, men who'd profit from betraying their neighbors. Their job? Police the Highlands, enforce the Disarming Act, stop clan warfare, prevent cattle raiding. In other words, spy on, intimidate, and suppress their own people. They were called Freichaden Dubh in Gaelic. The Black Watch. No one agrees on exactly why. Some say it was the dark government tartan they wore, somber greens and blues, far darker than the bright tartans of rebel clans. Others say it was their dark, unpopular mission. They weren't red-coated British soldiers, they were black-hearted traitors in Highland eyes. And the name stuck. For 14 years, these companies patrolled the glens, manning forts and enforcing laws most Highlanders despised. They were hated by their own people, but they were effective. And in 1739, King George II decided to make them something more dangerous, a full British Army regiment. On October 25th, 1739, the 6 independent companies were officially merged into the 43rd Highland Regiment of Foot. 4 new companies were added, bringing the total to 1,000 men. In May 1740, they gathered for their first muster at Aberfeldy, a field outside Fort William, where General Wade had built a bridge. They drilled, they trained. They wore the kilt in combat, armed with muskets, broadswords, dirks, and targes, round shields. Officers carried spontoons, pikes. Sergeants wielded Lochaber axes, medieval pole axes that could cleave a man in 2. They were Highland warriors, but now they belonged to the British Crown. In 1743, the regiment was ordered to march to London. King George II wanted to inspect them before deploying them to Flanders to fight the French. But a rumor spread like wildfire. The regiment was being sent to the Caribbean. The West Indies were a death sentence. Yellow fever, malaria, and dysentery killed more soldiers than combat ever did. The Highlanders hadn't signed up for that. Many believed they'd been enlisted only for service in Scotland. They'd been lied to before. Why trust the British now? Over 100 men deserted. They left London under cover of darkness and marched north toward Scotland. They made it as far as Northamptonshire before British troops surrounded them. They were dragged back to London in chains, court-martialed. 3 ringleaders were executed by firing squad in the Tower of London. The rest of the regiment was sent to Flanders anyway. It was a brutal message. You belong to Britain now. There's no going back. The Black Watch fought its first major battle at Fontenoy in 1745 during the War of Austrian Succession. British and Allied forces faced the French in Belgium. It was a disaster. The Allies were routed. But the Black Watch impressed everyone. The Duke of Cumberland, commander of British forces, noted their Highland style of fighting. Aggressive, fearless, terrifying. They didn't fight like line infantry. They fought like berserkers. While the regiment was in Flanders, the Jacobite rebellion of 1745 erupted back in Scotland. Bonnie Prince Charlie landed in the Highlands and rallied the clans. The Black Watch couldn't be sent back. They were needed on the continent. Instead, they were deployed to southern England to guard against a French invasion. After the rebellion was crushed at Culloden in 1746, the Black Watch remained in British service. By 1749, the regiment was renumbered to the 42nd Regiment of Foot, a number that would become legendary. Then came the 7 Years' War, the first truly global conflict. Britain and France fought across 4 continents, and the Black Watch was sent to North America. On July 8, 1758, The regiment faced its baptism by fire at the Battle of Ticonderoga in upstate New York. British General James Abercrombie commanded over 15,000 troops, the largest army Britain had ever fielded in North America. Their target, Fort Carillon, Ticonderoga, held by 4,000 French soldiers under the Marquis de Montcalm. What happened next is considered one of the most catastrophic tactical blunders in British military history. Instead of using his artillery or flanking the fort, Abercrombie ordered a frontal assault against fortified French positions protected by a thick abattis, a wall of felled trees with sharpened branches pointing outward like spears. The Black Watch led the charge. They advanced in disciplined lines. French muskets opened fire. Men fell in rows. The abattis shredded their formations. Officers screamed orders. Pipers played. Highlanders roared their war cries and kept coming. They charged 6 times for over 4 hours. Some men made it over the French breastworks and fought hand-to-hand before being cut down. The carnage was unimaginable. Out of roughly 1,000 Black Watch soldiers, over 300 were killed and 300 more wounded, a 60% casualty rate in a single afternoon. Among the dead was Major Duncan Campbell of Inverell. Legend says Campbell had dreamed years earlier that he would die at a place called Ticonderoga, a word he didn't understand at the time. A musket ball shattered his arm. He died 9 days later at Fort Edward. Abercrombie panicked and retreated. The British lost nearly 2,000 men total, the bloodiest battle in North America before the Civil War, but the Black Watch had earned something priceless: respect. King George III, impressed by their gallantry, designated them a Royal Regiment in July 1758 and authorized a 2nd Battalion. The official title became the 42nd Royal Highland Regiment of Foot. The Black Watch had become the Royal Highlanders. After Ticonderoga, the Black Watch wasn't just a regiment anymore, it was a tool Britain pulled out whenever things got ugly. They helped capture Quebec in 1759, ending French power in Canada. They fought at the Battle of Bushy Run in 1763 during Pontiac's Rebellion. They served in the Caribbean, taking Havana, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. When the American Revolution broke out in 1775, the Black Watch was sent to suppress the rebellion. At the Battle of Long Island in 1776, they defeated George Washington's forces, nearly capturing the future president. Throughout the war, they fought in brutal skirmishes and sieges, but by 1783, Britain had lost. The 13 colonies were independent. The Black Watch moved on. During the Napoleonic Wars, they fought in Egypt and Spain. At the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, they were part of the British square that held against French cavalry charges. Napoleon was finished, Britain ruled the seas, and the Black Watch had helped make it happen. In the 1800s, the regiment deployed to India, the jewel of the British Empire. The 73rd Perthshire Regiment of Foot, which had been raised as a 2nd Black Watch Battalion in 1786, fought in the capture of Mysore and Seringapatam. When the Indian Rebellion of 1857 erupted, both the 42nd and 73rd helped suppress it. In 1881, under the Childers reforms, the 2 regiments were officially merged into the Black Watch, Royal Highlanders. The tartan stayed. The red hackle, a distinctive feather plume worn on their bonnets, became their trademark. The traditions endured, but the deadliest tests were still ahead. When World War I erupted in August 1914, the Black Watch mobilized immediately. The regiment raised 25 battalions, regular, territorial, and service units. Over 30,000 men served. They fought on the Western Front, in the Balkans, in Mesopotamia, in Palestine. Everywhere Britain needed killers, the Black Watch was there. The Battle of Loos in September 1915 was catastrophic. The 9th Battalion went into action and was shredded, reduced to just 301 men in 2 days. On the Somme in 1916, Black Watch battalions were thrown into the meat grinder. Thousands died advancing across no man's land into machine gun fire. In Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, the 2nd Battalion fought to relieve the besieged British garrison at Kut. At the Battle of Hannah on January 21, 1916, they attacked entrenched Turkish positions head-on. Out of 250 effective soldiers, 75 were killed in a single day. In 1917, at the Battle of Arras, Black Watch units took part in the assault on Vimy Ridge and Hill 70. Later that year, they fought at Passchendaele, one of the most horrific battles in history, where men drowned in mud. By the time the armistice was signed on November 11, 1918, 8,390 Black Watch soldiers were dead. Thousands more were wounded, gassed, or mentally shattered. The regiment was awarded 69 battle honors. 3 soldiers won the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest award for valor. A 4th VC was awarded to a Black Watch officer commanding another regiment. The Great War had gutted an entire generation of Scottish manhood. But the Black Watch endured. When World War II began in 1939, the Black Watch was ready again. In May 1940, the 1st Battalion fought in France as part of the British Expeditionary Force. When the German blitzkrieg smashed through Allied lines, the Black Watch covered the retreat to Dunkirk. They were among the last units evacuated. In 1941, the 2nd Battalion was sent to Tobruk in North Africa, a besieged fortress surrounded by German and Italian forces. In November, they attempted a breakout to link up with the 8th Army. The attack was supposed to have tank support. The tanks never came. Within 1 hour, over 300 men were casualties, but they took their objective anyway. In 1942, the reformed 1st Battalion, along with the 5th and 7th Battalions, arrived in North Africa as part of the 51st Highland Division. They fought at El Alamein, the turning point of the war in North Africa. British forces, including the Black Watch, smashed Rommel's Africa Corps and began the long pursuit across the desert. They fought at Mareth, Wadi Akarit, and entered Tripoli in triumph. In 1944, the Black Watch landed in Normandy as part of the D-Day invasion. They fought through France, Belgium, and into Germany, helping liberate Europe from Nazi tyranny. By the end of the war, the Black Watch had fought in nearly every theater: North Africa, Italy, France, the Far East. Once again, they had proven themselves in the crucible of total war. After World War II, the Black Watch didn't rest. But here's the shift. After 2 centuries of empire building, the Black Watch now fought wars Britain no longer knew how to win. In 1946, they were deployed to Karachi to suppress the Royal Indian Navy mutiny, a revolt by Indian sailors demanding independence. The Black Watch restored order. In February 1948, they were the last British unit to leave Pakistan, marching through Karachi in a final parade, saluted by Prime Minister Jinnah. During the Korean War, 1950 and 1953, the Black Watch fought at the Second Battle of the Hook in November 1952, a brutal defensive engagement against Chinese forces. They held the line. In the 1950s, they helped suppress the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. In Cyprus, they dealt with the Oka terrorists during intercommunal violence. In 1963, 9 Black Watch pipers, touring the United States, were invited to march in President John F. Kennedy's funeral procession in Washington, D.C. They played The Brown-Haired Maiden, The Badge of Scotland, and The Barren Rocks of Aden as the cortege moved from the White House to the cathedral. From the 1970s onward, the Black Watch deployed repeatedly to Northern Ireland during the Troubles, a brutal counterinsurgency campaign that lasted decades. They became experts in urban warfare, peacekeeping, and dealing with terrorism. In 1997, the Black Watch was the final British garrison unit in Hong Kong when the territory was handed back to China, a symbolic end to Britain's imperial age. Then came the 21st century. In March 2003, the 1st Battalion Black Watch took part in the invasion of Iraq. As an armored battle group, they spearheaded the assault on Basra, Iraq's 2nd largest city. They fought in intense urban combat, clearing insurgents and securing key infrastructure. After the initial invasion, they transitioned to counterinsurgency and peacekeeping operations. In 2004, they were redeployed and took part in the Second Battle of Fallujah, one of the bloodiest engagements of the Iraq War. The Black Watch proved once again that they were among the best. But by the early 2000s, the British Army was changing. Recruiting was difficult. Maintaining small, separate regiments was inefficient. The Ministry of Defense decided to consolidate Scotland's historic regiments into a single formation. On December 16, 2004, it was announced that the Black Watch would merge with 5 other Scottish regiments: the Royal Scots, the King's Own Scottish Borderers, the Royal Highland Fusiliers, the Highlanders, and the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders to form the Royal Regiment of Scotland. There was outrage. Veterans protested. Politicians intervened. Queen Elizabeth II herself stepped in to ensure the Black Watch would retain its identity within the new structure. On March 28, 2006, the Black Watch officially became the 3rd Battalion, Royal Regiment of Scotland, Victorious Scots. They kept the tartan, they kept the red hackle, they kept the traditions. But as an independent regiment, the Black Watch was no more. In 2009, Black Watch soldiers carried out one of the largest air assault operations in Afghanistan, Operation Panther's Claw, an intense combat mission involving over 350 troops. Today, the Black Watch remains an active battalion within the Royal Regiment of Scotland, based at Fort George in Inverness. They still recruit from Fife, Dundee, Angus, and Perthshire. They still wear the dark tartan and the red hackle. But the era of independent Highland regiments is over. The Black Watch served for 267 years as an independent regiment from 1739 to 2006. In that time, they fought in nearly every major British conflict. They earned over 200 battle honors, tens of thousands served, thousands died. They became the senior Highland regiment in the British Army, but the cost was staggering. In World War I alone, 8,390 Black Watch soldiers were killed. In World War II, thousands more. In colonial wars, counterinsurgencies, and peacekeeping operations across the globe, the regiment bled and bled. The Black Watch were feared by enemies and respected by allies. French soldiers at Ticonderoga called them infuriated demons. A Canadian militiaman at Quebec in 1759 described them coming at him with streaming plaids, bonnets, and large swords. They were Scotland's warrior elite, But they fought for an empire that had conquered Scotland, suppressed its culture, and turned its clans into instruments of imperial power. The irony is brutal. The Black Watch was created to police rebellious Highlanders, but it became the ultimate symbol of Highland martial prowess, a regiment that embodied everything the British government had tried to destroy. From a police force hunting their own people to the most elite fighting unit in the British Empire, the Black Watch's story is one of blood, betrayal, and unbreakable will. They charged into hell at Ticonderoga. They held the line at Waterloo. They stormed the beaches at Normandy. They fought in deserts, jungles, and mountains across the world. They were feared. They were legendary. And their story is written in the bodies of the men who wore the tartan and the red hackle. The Black Watch, am Freitjaden Doob, the Dark Watch, Britain's devils in kilts. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more military history. Drop a comment. What battle or regiment should I cover next? See you in the next one.